If you're one of the few that decided to just build Wind Asuka without any consideration of ammo lines, then you're likely building her wrong. In fact, it's completely irresponsible to just say 2 ammo lines and slap a bastion and call it a day because it's actually likely going to break your Asuka. This unit actually is one of the few where being accurate at building her is the most important, because if you don't pay attention well, you could be losing 10 to 15% of her damage. For a unit that does nearly similar damage to the current meta pilgrims out right now, that's a huge chunk of damage that you'd be missing out on. But worry not, in this video I'll be telling you how to properly use Wind Asuka. I'll also be giving alternatives, as there are workarounds if your build isn't the most optimal due to some hard to replace overload lines that you currently have. Make sure to pay attention to the video, as understanding her mechanics will allow you to understand what to look for when using her. There's a lot of words in her skill kit, so let's try to simplify it down. Her kit revolves around her bursting. If she doesn't burst, she would lose about 30 to 40% of her damage, which is a pretty huge chunk considering she's one of the top burst DPS right now. Whenever she bursts, she gains buffs for herself. While attacking during her burst, she applies a stacking debuff on the enemy, which causes the enemy to take damage taken increase. The most important factor for Wind Asuka is making sure she doesn't reload during her burst. Having her reload during her burst could easily make her lose about 10% of her damage if you don't pay enough attention, which is why having her built correctly is one thing I'm emphasizing on this, and I'll expand more about this soon. Then by the end of the duration of her burst, which only lasts for 9 seconds, there's a few key things that happens. There's a final damage based on the stacks you've accumulated during her burst. After this occurs, the debuff on the enemy also disappears. She also loses 100% of her ammo and is forced to reload with 60% reload speed. This forced reload is not affected by reload speed buffs. The machine gun heating up speed, or in other words, uptime that machine guns typically have when they start shooting, is debuffed by 100%. This essentially makes her not able to gain speed when shooting until the debuff is cleared after 3 seconds. She also does slightly heal herself. It's not much noteworthy, but it might just help in some situations. With the new Wind Ray, you can negate the debuff happening on the 3rd situation, which puts her wind-up time to a normal speed. Seems straightforward, right? There's actually a workaround to the negative effects from number 2 and number 3. I'm just putting this now, as while it's a niche situation at the moment, that wouldn't stop future possibilities that this is going to be possible in more team comps. More specifically, if your reload speed is more than 60%, perhaps maybe closer to 100%, or what we call infinite ammo setup with 100% reload speed, then you can actually attempt this way instead. To be specific on how this works, you basically manual reload Asuka just right before her first reload is happening, where it causes her ammo to be 0. This causes Asuka to do a reload with her reload speed with the buffs such as coming from Crown, Brevity, or Resilience Cube, and bypasses the forced 60% reload speed. As you know, the less time you spend on reloading, the more you can keep your original heat up for machine guns, rendering the debuff of negative 100% heat up speed useless because we basically didn't lose fire rate for reloading at 100% reload speed. As mentioned, this is a niche setup which is mainly taking advantage of infinite ammo, but you can actually take advantage of this also, like I mentioned, if you do have more than 60% reload speed. In future situations where we're not using Wind Ray, or for more extreme min-maxers out there, this is some food for thought that can be explored later. But that's just one advanced technique you can do with Asuka. For most of you, this portion is more pressing and the important part, that is building Wind Asuka correctly. A crucial portion of building Wind Asuka involves playing around this burst duration. If you don't have an ideal build on her, there are many still workarounds we can accommodate. One of the workarounds was the advanced reload timing technique I mentioned just now. I don't expect everyone to do that though, so here's some more info with building her. There's 2 main overload build that I can see Wind Asuka is at. Really, the second one is largely depending on your luck with overloads and how much rocks you are willing to sink more on her to min-max her damage. For the most part, and what everyone should aim for, the most recommended build is at least 3 max ammo lines with at least a total of 163% ammo. Do note that machine gun dulls also give some bonus ammo lines. You can use that to your advantage when counting that fact. However, the more the better in terms of flexibility of team building. With this much ammo, you can have Asuka only reload during her forced reload after her burst, allowing you to use Bastion Cube. With 3 max ammo lines too, you are able to get your 4th extra line to be the flex line like critical rate or critical damage, resulting in a build of 4 times attack, 4 times elemental, 3 times ammo, and 1 times critical. Now, for some people that are unfortunate where rerolling is very difficult, you might find yourself with 2 ammo lines. This isn't the most recommended build, but if you find yourself stuck in some overload situation, this isn't the worst. In particular, when you have 2 ammo lines, aiming for between 115% to 135% is okay as well. But with this also, you have to be careful at your burst rotation timing, or rather in particular, you want Asuka to be reloading in between burst rotations. This might have some slight effect on energy generation, but this is something you have to unfortunately take the hit on for not having more ammo lines. With this setup, I usually would use resilience. At times you might feel the need to make sure you force yourself to reload so that she's not reloading during her burst. The alternative also is getting a high roll on 2 ammo lines. A tier 14 ammo line is at 81% and a tier 15 of ammo line is at 85%. Having 2 ammo lines of this will allow you to reach that 160% ammo line. With this setup, you can actually set up a 2 ammo line build and 2 crit line build with Asuka. But more regarding timing your reloading on her burst. In particular, the variance on this occurs depending on the gap between your burst durations. So it depends on your team's energy generation speed and your cooldown reduction unit if you can reach the cooldown fast enough. For example, you need less ammo when using volume or litter, assuming you can reach their cooldown reduction since their cooldown is 8.21 seconds. Meanwhile, if you use the killer wife or rouge, their cooldown is only 7 seconds, meaning there is more time between full burst duration, which means that Asuka will be shooting longer, hence needing more ammo. There's also the variance of whether you have wind ray or not in your team. If you have wind ray, then that means wind Asuka starts shooting earlier and thus needing a bit more ammo than if you didn't have wind ray. This same principle applies actually if you have 3 ammo lines, which is why I mentioned having more ammo is better because it ensures that Asuka won't be reloading during her burst if for some reason your energy gain is lower and causing longer gap between bursts. But just because more ammo is better doesn't necessarily mean that you should aim for 4 ammo lines. You'll likely not get any damage increase due to her forced reload. There is one situation to her 4 max ammo line though that I could justify. If for some reason you accidentally hit 4 times attack, 4 times elemental, and 4 times ammo already, I could see the argument of allowing yourself to roll for higher values of attack and elemental with less prioritization on the value of ammo line. Having more ammo lines means we need less percent value per line to reach our threshold goals. Alright, that was definitely a lengthy portion on overloads. I definitely made sure to include the part for other situations that you guys are likely going to be put yourself into. For skills, it's rather straightforward. When leveling up from 1 to 7, skill 1 increased the damage by around 20 to 25%, skill 2 increased by about 1 to 5%, and burst increased by about 5 to 10%, which then we can make a recommendation of budget build for Asuka to be 10-4-7, and then going to 10-7-10 for competitive, and then finally 10-10-10 if you have the resources. For doll, it's recommended especially if you are lacking ammo lines to hit some thresholds I mentioned earlier, and her being a good DPS, it doesn't hurt to invest right now. For cube, for more details just refer to the overload section again, but the gist is if you have enough ammo lines to not reload until her forced reload using Bastion, then use that. Otherwise, I would use resilience to time reloading in between her bursts. And then finally for teams, with Asuka changes the best wind team landscape. For majority of the players, the new main single wind team would likely be Crown, Rapi Red Hood, Wind Asuka, Scarlet Black Shadow, and Treasure Helm. Treasure Helm allows healing for crown buffs and also faster energy gain, which the team severely lacks. In theory, Wind Ray would actually be better than Scarlet Black Shadow for this particular setup, but the issue lies with likely the player tendency that many wouldn't have as much investment on Wind Ray, and not many would have the same level of investments on Wind Ray as much as their Scarlet Black Shadow. Apart from this, Wind Asuka is pretty much flexible to any team, whether an on-burst unit or off-burst unit. You can put her in Tianaga, bunnies, or even maids. She can be used an off-burst like Moderna as well for neutral as well if anything. Aside from that, using the base team as the main team, you can adjust with whatever you have left really. She might likely see some use with machine gun team with Grave also. But yeah, she's pretty much a standalone B3 bossing unit. That's the main thing about Wind Asuka for now. Sorry it took this long as I had plenty of things that came up and I also got sick just now and I'm actually sick recording this. I likely cut off a lot of cough in between recording this, but I just had to make sure to get this guide out before Solar Raid came out. Anyways, I really want to get more videos out, but things has been happening. I really want to get the videos as soon as possible, but just couldn't. In any case, that's about it for me for now. As usual, I stream more on Twitch and you guys likely have seen what's been up with me the past few days there. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you guys want to see more Nikke videos. That's it for now, and I'll see you guys next time.